Today, I'm going to be sharing with you guys the very best early game commanders in Rise of Kingdoms for free to play players. So if you are a brand new player to the game, or if you're coming back to the game, you're starting over and you want to know what commanders should you be focusing on at the very start within your first couple of weeks, this video is for you. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a sponsored partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms. So if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, consider subscribing down below and drop a thumbs up while you're down there. It really does help out the channel a ton. All right, now this video is going to be broken down into 6 different categories, so use the timestamps down below, but we're going to start with the best commanders to use to defeat barbarians out in the world and level up all of your other commanders. The reason that we're starting here is because if you can't even level up your commanders, then you can't really do anything else we're going to talk about in this video. And the first commander in this category we have to talk about is Boudica. Now, Boudica is an epic commander that you can get in a couple of different ways. Primarily, you'll get her through silver keys or silver chest openings, gold chests in the tavern. You also can get her as the starting commander for the Britain civilization, which I don't recommend. I recommend China for new players, but if you did pick Britain, it's not a big deal. She's a great commander to start with. That's why we're starting with her in this video. And you also can get her from the brand new Vengeance game mode, which is a very critical early game event. In fact, this early game event is going to be critical that you progress through as much as possible, not only because it gives you a ton of experience to level up your commanders and a bunch of different resources, but also you're going to get a lot of sculptures of commanders that we're going to talk about in this video. So if you haven't already, start here and grind through as many of these levels as you can. This is like non-negotiable. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can get Boudica, but the reason that we're talking about her for leveling up all of your other commanders that are on your account is because, one, she has the peacekeeping tree, which means she is built through her talents to be better at defeating barbarians, and then on top of that, her second skill says that you deal 25% more damage to barbs, and both the primary and secondary commander of this commander's troop gain 20% more experience from defeating barbarians. So focusing in on leveling her up in the early game is going to get you the benefit of leveling up everybody else faster than normal. Now, if you are unable to pair her with a secondary commander, meaning when you put her out in the world, you can only pick one commander like this instead of 2. If you don't have the option of picking a second commander here, what that means is you need to get your commander up to at least 3 stars. Okay, and in order to do that, you have to level them up, which again is why we're starting with leveling commanders in the early game. So her most important skills to focus on are her second skill and her first skill. These are definitely the best 2 skills on her kit. And then when it comes to a talent build, I would point you in this direction. You want to prioritize getting your hands on Trophy Hunter. This is going to get you more resources when you're defeating barbarians, and along the way you're going to be able to get your hands on Quick Study, which is going to give you 15% more experience on top of everything else. In the skill tree, you want to make sure you put 3 points into Rejuvenate, and then you'll put 2 points into Clarity. Those, unfortunately, you can't get 3 points here, but that's just the trade-off that you have to make if you're going to max out the top of the peacekeeping tree, which gives you some healing, which is nice out in the world, especially in the early game. Now, later in the video, we'll talk about defeating barbarian forts, and if you're going to use Boudica to do that, you definitely want to grab Mighty Force. This talent is very good for defeating barb forts, but we'll talk about that more later. Now, the second commander we have to talk about when it comes to leveling up everybody on your account is Lohar. In fact, he is the king of leveling up your commanders in Rise of Kingdoms for 2 reasons. First of all, he deals 35% more damage to barbarians, which is the highest out of any epic commander, but on top of that, his third skill gives you 70% more experience. Okay, so we just talked about how good Boudica was because she gave you 20%, and here we have Lohar giving you 70%. Okay, he also deals more damage to barbs than she does as well, so he is literally built for leveling up your commanders. So he is the number one that you want to get this third skill to max out. Okay, like more than anything, this is the most important skill. He also has a crazy healing factor when leaving combat, which keeps you out in the world. You also have some healing on the active skill. He's very good. Hi Tiger, look who came to say hi. She loves when I start recording because she thinks she's getting some treats right now. So if you want Tiger to get some treats, go ahead and drop a like down below. She's so cute. Oh my god. Now the problem with Lohar is that you only are able to get sculptures of him through an event called Lohar's Trial. Okay, and this event actually does come around very early on in your kingdom, so even if you're a newer player, you're going to get access to him. And you'll notice that during Lohar's trial event, it's going to drop items called Lohar's longbow or Lohar's buckler, and when these drop and you use them, they're going to spawn in a Lohar on the map, and then in order to defeat him, you actually have to launch a rally, so you have to be inside of an alliance. But as you can see here, you'll get sculptures of Lohar from rallying him down. You'll also gain some other goodies like gems and speed ups, and you'll also get alliance gifts in here as well, and that's going to get some Lohar sculptures too for everybody in your alliance. So you absolutely want to get as many sculptures of him as possible when that event comes around. If you miss the event, don't worry, he will come back, so you will have more chances to get him, okay? But definitely take advantage when that event first lands in your kingdom. Now when it comes to the best talent builds for Lohar, you're going to grab something like this where you put 2 points into rejuvenate, you don't do 3, you don't need 3 points in rejuvenate on the support tree. On the skill tree you do. You'll notice the numbers are actually different here, but you'll also put 3 points into counter attack, because anytime you receive healing, you gain 9% attack for 3 seconds, and as we went over, Lohar heals himself quite a bit with his active skill. You'll put 3 points into loose formation for some tankiness, and then just like we did with Boudica, you're going to put 5 points in curing chant, 3 points into trophy hunter, and if you are going to use him to take down barbarian forts, you'll want 3 points into mighty force. Now you'll notice I have 1 point left over. I just grabbed half a point of health, but if you want, you move that point over here, so at least you get a little bit of something there. Now the final commander we're going to talk about when it comes to leveling up your other commanders in the game is actually Ethelfled. Now she is pretty much the only free to play legendary commander in the entire game, and luckily she's good at a lot of things. She's very good for peacekeeping and defeating barbarians. She's also very good at PvP for KvK1, and we're going to talk about that later in the video when we discuss the best early game PvP commanders. Spoiler alert, Ethelfled will find herself there, but the reason I tell you this is because she is very versatile at multiple things, whereas Lohar is really just a one-trick pony. And Ethelfled is great for leveling up your commanders because her third skill gives you 35% more damage to barbs and 35% more experience from defeating barbarians. So all of that is on a single skill, whereas Lohar's was spread across 2 skills. But the difference here is that she is legendary. You can only get her sculptures from the expedition here, which you will have to progress through. We'll talk about that in this video, so if you're having trouble with expedition, stay tuned. I'm going to give you a ton of tips and best commanders there. Now when it comes to talent builds, it's very similar to other builds that we've shown off in this video. You grab curing chant, you grab trophy hunter, you put 2 points into rejuvenate for the support tree, 3 points into loose formation. We don't have any healing on her specifically, so you don't need elixir, and then you've got a couple of points left over. I put 2 points into fresh recruits for more troops on the battlefield because that's very important, and then 3 points into mighty force because she's very good at rallying barbarian forts as well. If you're never going to use it for that, obviously you can take these 3 points away and you could do something like this instead, where you put 3 points into fresh recruits and 2 points into steely soul for an extra 1% of normal damage. The normal damage is the white numbers you see every single turn when you're hitting a barbarian. But really the best part about Ethelfled when it comes to actually killing barbarians in the world is her half circle AoE. So what you're going to notice is when she casts her active skill, it is in the shape of a half circle like that, okay? And the reason that that's so good for killing barbarians is because you can actually chain barbarians out in the world. Now I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off with this barbarian specifically. I'm not very good at chaining. Yeah, I can't do it. I'm not very good at chaining, okay? But the point is, if you have barbarians that are very close to one another, that half circle AoE is actually a way to pull other nearby barbarians in and hit your army as a result of that, okay? And the benefit of that is you're gonna, once that barbarian starts hitting you, it's not going to cost you any action points here, okay, which is what you need in order to attack barbarians. As you can see, if I want to attack this barbarian, it costs 70 action points, okay? So if we can get them to hit us, then we can kill them for free and just get the rewards for doing so, okay? And that's the benefit of Ethelfled, because her AoE, that stands for area of effect, her AoE damage causes you to get free barbarian kills if there are lots of barbarians in your area stacked on top of one another. And we're going to talk more about AoE commanders later in the video when we discuss expedition, but just know that that is one of the best parts about Ethelfled, her active skill being a half circle AoE. Okay, now let's talk about the best commanders to use to defeat barbarian forts out in the world. When you first start Rise of Kingdoms, if you look in the top right corner of the map here, you're going to find yourself in one of the outer zones, okay, farthest away from the center of the map. And in these these zones you're going to find barbarian forts that are between levels 1 and 3. Now as a new player, I would highly recommend that you stick to only defeating barbarian forts that are level 1 and 2 for your first couple of days or weeks playing the game. The reason for that is because level 3 barbarian forts are going to be a little bit challenging at the very start of the game. You're going to need a lot of troops in your army, and in order to do that you're going to need to level up your castle. Okay, on top of that you need to be dealing a lot of damage, and so you need your commanders leveled up quite a bit and your progress for your technology and your buildings and things like that. I'm not going to touch on that here, okay, but just know that brand new players should stick to barb forts level 1 and 2, and the reason that you need to do these is for books of covenant. Okay, you need these to level up your castle, and your castle being leveled up is non-negotiable, and the reason for that is because if you ever want to get your city hall to max level, then you need to max out your castle. It is a bottleneck to your early game and mid game progress, but furthermore your castle is actually what determines your rallied army capacity. Okay, which, you know, the more troops you have in your army, the higher level barbarian forts you can defeat, and the higher level ones give you more rewards, which give you more books of covenant, which lets you level this up, and you can see how this goes. But beyond that, one of the things that a lot of people don't remember, or I should say older players don't remember this, is that in the expedition there are some levels here where you actually have to rally an enemy city, and when you rally these enemy cities in the expedition mode, the amount of troops that you have in your army is determined by your castle size. And these events or these missions in expedition are super important because this is one of the ways that you're going to get sculptures of Ethelfled every single day. Okay, every day you're going to log in at reset, you see this timer right here, and it's going to automatically collect some of the treasure of warrior queen, and so every single day that you log in you're going to have a chance of getting more sculptures of Ethelfled. Okay, and so you want to be able to defeat these rally missions as early as possible in your playthrough of Rise of Kingdoms, because the sooner that you defeat them, the more sculptures you're going to get of Ethelfled every single day, which will maximize the number of sculptures you get of her before KvK1. Okay, so you're kind of on a time limit here. All right, so needless to say, I went on that whole tangent there, but defeating barbarian forts in the world is very important. Okay, and it's going to come as no surprise that the best commanders to do this with are of course your peacekeeping commanders. Okay, so we've already talked about Ethelfled, we've already talked about Lohar, and we've already talked about Boudica. These three commanders, just like defeating barbarians, are also exceptionally good at defeating barbarian forts out in the world. Now Ethelfled is exceptionally good here because her fourth skill gives you higher rallied army capacity. Okay, so you have more troops in your army using Ethelfled than anybody else here, which is very, very nice. I do want to caution you, however, a couple of these commanders aren't necessarily perfect for rallying forts. If we talk about commanders like Cao Cao and Belisarius, they are peacekeepers, and so they are very good, and I would say if you're going to use them for forts, you should use them as your secondary commander. And the reason for this is because they actually have the mobility talent tree, which is not very good for defeating barbarian forts, especially in the early game. The reason for that is because these talents are very good at moving around the map, but they're very bad at dealing damage or, you know, being tanky or anything like that. So when we look at commanders like Ethelfled with the support tree, or we look at commanders like Lohar with the support tree, or even Boudica with the skill tree, this tree does a lot of damage. Those are going to be your best choices for primary commander. I see this is a mistake a lot of even late game players I see make the mistake of using mobility commanders to take down forts. It's never a good idea. Now I do just want to touch on one last thing when it comes to defeating forts. If you are a low spending player, then you definitely want to use Minamoto. Okay, you get Minamoto through making purchases in Rise of Kingdoms, and you can max out his first two skills. So having 5511, you can do that for I think $30 or less, and he's going to be really good not only for barbarian forts but also for regular barbarians, and in KvK1 he's very good for PvP. So in the early game, Minamoto is actually good at kind of everything we're talking about in this video except for AoE. He does single target damage, but he's also going to help you in the Vengeance Path of Vengeance game mode. So Minamoto, again, this video is primarily towards free-to-play players, but if you are a low spender, I did just want to touch on him because he's just so good at all of this stuff. I can't ignore it. And he also has the skill tree as well. He has 50% damage to barbarians instead of the 25 or 35% we've been looking at. All in all, really good stuff. Now let's move on to the expedition, and the expedition game mode, as I just explained a minute ago, is crucial for getting sculptures of Ethelfled. Okay, and again, again, like we're going to talk about later in the video, Ethelfled is one of the best PvP commanders when you go into KvK1 if you're a free-to-play player. She's also good at peacekeeping, as you've seen. But beyond that, at the very start of a kingdom or server, there's going to be what's called the Expedition Dash event, and this is a limited time event. The sooner that you can beat Expedition Mission 40, the higher you're going to be on the rankings here, and you are going to get a certain number of gems for doing so. So gems, speed ups, resources. And so if you're a free-to-play player, you're going to need all of those things. Now in the expedition, there's a couple of different types of missions here. What you'll notice is that a majority of these missions have multiple enemy targets. Okay, you'll see that here we have 2 enemy targets for this mission, and other missions have a single enemy target that happens to be a bit stronger than enemies in other previous levels. And the way that you can tell the different missions apart is that every 5 levels is when you're going to have those sort of boss level missions. Okay, so again, level 20 here, you're going to see that we have a single enemy. This is a legendary commander, Hannibal Barca. And then you'll also notice that, you know, even if we come up to level 50, for example, it's a single enemy. This is Seong-Gye. But all of the other missions, so let's just pick 38. Okay, you'll see that there are multiple enemies here. And the reason that I'm making this distinction is because the troops and armies that you use might actually change a little bit depending on if you have a single boss target or if you have multiple weaker but many different armies. Okay, and the reason for that is because some commanders are really good at single target damage and other commanders are good at AoE damage. Now there's a lot of overlap here, and you know, it's not that difficult because it is expedition after all, but in the early game that distinction does actually matter. So let's start with the single target levels. Now there's a few things that you want to optimize for when you only have one enemy target, because you're going to be able to have multiple armies here, so it'll be 2v1, 3v1, 5v1, whatever the case might be. And I know this might be a little bit boring, but the first place we have to start is talking about Boudica. Okay, she as an expertise commander, but even without the expertise, has a single target damage factor of 600, and you reduce the enemy's rage by 100 and its attack by 25% for 2 seconds. Okay, now the best part about this is actually the rage and attack reduction, and the reason that this matters more for the single target missions is because, again, you're 2v1, 3v1, 4v1, you want to debuff that target as much as possible, because that single army is going to be stronger than the armies in the levels where there's multiple different enemies. So by debuffing that single target, all of your armies are going to get the benefit of attacking that debuffed target. Okay, so let's say my Boudica army is attacking and it debuffs them with the attack, for example, is debuffed. Now all of my other armies are taking less damage from that enemy because of the attack debuff. Now on top of that, you actually gain a lot of value from reducing your enemy's rage, and the reason for that is because rage is what you need to cast your active skills, and your active skills are where a majority of your damage is being dealt, and the same is true for the enemy. So if you can cause your enemy to cast their active skills slower, that means you're going to take fewer active skills, you're going to be taking less damage, and so any commanders that you can use that reduce the target's rage are going to be exceptional. And beyond that, any commanders you can use that debuff the enemy in any sort of way are going to be very good. So Boudica, even though we've talked about her a lot here, just so happens to fit that bill just through her active skill alone, but she also has some healing factor as well, which is quite good. Healing is great for these missions because you want to stay alive as much as possible. Next, let's talk about El Cid. Now this is of course a legendary commander, but one of the cool things about him is that you can actually get a lot of value out of El Cid during the single target expedition game modes, even if you've just unlocked him. Okay, and what I mean by that is, you know, let's say you get lucky, you unlock him from gold keys. Okay, and this first skill is at 1. Well, it's going to be dealing only 500 damage factor, but for the next 1 second the target cannot launch a basic attack or use active skills. So basically what that means is you are preventing the target from not only dealing damage to you for 1 turn, but also from generating rage for 1 turn. And just like we said with Boudica, preventing the enemy from getting rage is really nice. That means they're going to pass their active skills less frequently, and so not only again are you dealing damage here, but you're debuffing the target. And then if you can unlock this second skill, again just leaving this at 1, you have a 10% chance to deal more direct damage to that target as well. So El Cid, his active skill is the star of the show show here, but we do have two different single target damage options that are quite good for a commander that you only have to unlock to get the benefit there. And then of course, if you're lucky, you get a bunch of sculptures, put them all into the active skill. But I want to be very clear, you should not be using universal legendary commander sculptures on El Cid. You don't want to do that. I wouldn't even get him past 2 stars for a while, honestly, because you're just going to use him as a secondary. He's not worth really dumping a ton of experience into. The next commander we're going to talk about is Ethelfled. You're sensing a trend here in this video. The benefit of Ethelfled is that even though she's dealing AoE damage, and I said that these are single target missions, she has one of the best early game debuffs in the entire game here on the active skill. If this is at 5, you're reducing the enemy's attack, defense, and health for 2 seconds. So that is reducing the enemy stats by 90%. That is insane. That is an insanely good debuff, especially in the early game. And so while her AoE damage doesn't really move the needle per se, because it's only single target, the debuff here is the reason that you get her, just like we talked about with Boudica, with the attack reduction. Really good stuff here. Even if you only have this at 1 point, right, you're still reducing attack, defense, and health by 10%. That's 30% total just for unlocking the skill. It's very good. The next commander I want to talk about for these single target damage missions is actually Seong-Gye, which is very unconventional. I think a lot of players wouldn't really think of Seong-Gye because she's a gathering legendary, but hear me out. The active skill, again, even if you only have it at 1 point, is dealing 600 damage to a single target and reducing the enemy's rage by 50. Okay, and like I said, the more rage reduction you can get on these single target boss levels, the better, because you're going to be causing the enemy to cast their active skill as infrequently as possible, and that's really great. And if you're lucky enough to unlock her 4th skill using the star level up sort of exploit, I guess, if you don't know what that is, it's probably my most viewed YouTube short. Watch it on the channel. It'll take you just like a minute. But if you're able to unlock the 4th skill without too much investment, then just like with El Cid, you have a 10% chance of instant proc damage if you're using only siege. Okay, so keep that in mind. Not as good as El Cid, but still. So between Boudica, El Cid, and Seong-Gye, you are really suppressing the enemy's rage gain, and that's going to help you just stay alive as long as possible. Now, beyond that, I also want to point out Casimir, who is one of the newest legendary gathering commanders, and just like with Seong-Gye, the active skill only needs to be unlocked in order to get a nice little debuff here. So not only does it deal single target damage, but for the next 3 seconds, the target deals 5% less normal damage. Okay, and the normal damage is the white numbers that you see every single turn. So again, for 3 seconds, you're just debuffing the enemy's damage every single turn for those 3 seconds. Really nice stuff here. Finally, if we take a look at Lady Seong-Gye, she also has a nice AoE enemy health reduction, which is really good. This is also pretty good for the AoE expedition missions as well. But just go through here and look at which commanders have single target debuffs. These are commanders that you want to use for the single target missions. But again, primarily you want to focus on enemy rage reduction. So Herman is also a great example here. You silence the target for 2 seconds and reduce the rage by 100. Now, when it comes to the expedition missions that have multiple enemy targets all stacked on one another, what you want for these is actually AoE damage commanders, right? It makes a lot of sense. The more targets you can hit with every active skill, the more value you're going to get there. Okay, and so the strategy actually changes a little bit when it comes to these other missions, and so the commanders that you might use changes a little bit, right? So Sun Tzu, he is quite frankly probably the best epic commander in the entire game for dealing damage. Okay, his active skill, even if it's not expertise, deals damage to 3 targets plus additional damage the next second, and you gain rage from that skill. So really powerful active skill. Expertise did 5 targets, 1000 damage factor total. Amazing stuff here. He's also very tanky. He has bonuses to skill damage. We're going to be talking about Sun Tzu more later on in this video, especially during the PvP section, which is why I always recommend players start as China, by the way. He's just so good, but you definitely want to leverage him for these AoE missions in expedition. Beyond that, Baibars is quite good as well. Same thing, the active skill, 3 targets, 750 damage factor per target. If you you expertise him, it is 5 targets, 1,000 damage factor. Again, looking for this target type AoE. This is really what you want for those multi-enemy missions in Expedition. Kusunoki, same thing, has a lens here, removes all your debuffs, and then deals a bunch of damage to 3 targets, which is quite good. Of course, like we've mentioned before, Ethelfled is exceptional when it comes to AoE damage as well. She actually deals damage to 5 targets even if she's not expertise, so even just getting this skill unlocked, you're going to be dealing a ton of damage with her, which is really, really good. And it's an AoE debuff, so you're debuffing all of those targets by up to 90% total. It's insane. And finally, I do want to touch on Mehmed II as well. Now again, this is one of those commanders just like El Cid where you don't want to put universal sculptures into them, but if you are lucky enough to just unlock them, they are actually quite good here. Okay, so just like with Ethelfled, merely unlocking this first skill deals damage to 5 enemy troops. Okay, now his active skill, the shape of the fan, is much smaller than other commanders, so you have to kind of position him a little bit more properly when dealing AoE damage. But on top of that, if you unlock his second skill, even at 1 point, you're dealing 8% more skill damage and you gain 8% attack. Okay, so if you get lucky and you summon Mehmed through the golden chests in the tavern, again, just level him up to unlock that second star. Don't put any sculptures into him, don't invest too much into him, but once you unlock that AoE, it's quite good for Expedition. Same thing is true for Thutmose. He has a 3 target fan shaped AoE. You just unlock this and boom, you're good to go. Again, I'm going to reference the gold star level up sort of exploit that you can use. Check out that YouTube short. Okay, but if you are able to just unlock all of his skills at 2 stars basically, then the third skill is going to be great here as well. You have a 10% chance to increase the skill damage the target receives just by unlocking this, and that's going to make all of your other commanders who deal skill damage deal more damage to that target. Okay, now let's move on to Sunset Canyon, because the commanders that you use here are a little bit different than the commanders we've talked about so far. There is some overlap which we'll touch on, but Sunset Canyon is very good in the early game for getting some nice rewards, especially as free to play. If you know what you're doing here, you can perform quite good, and as long as you are in the top 5 every single day, you can get a gold key, or within the top 100 every week, you're going to get a gold key again there too. So getting the gold keys as free to play is going to be really valuable, because that's going to get you more commanders, epic commanders, and maybe even legendary commanders in the early game. And so the earlier that you prioritize this game mode and do really well here, the more sculptures you're going to have going into KvK1, the stronger your commanders are going to be. And so definitely take this game mode seriously. Now, I have at least 1 or 2 guides on my channel covering Sunset Canyon and how you want to think about doing this game mode. I'm not going to explain that here, but basically TLDR is that there is a front row and a back row, and you want your front row to be your more tanky commanders, you want your back row to be typically more so the damage dealers. Okay, so who are we going to use in the front row? Well, like I said before, Sun Tzu is one of the best PvP commanders in the game. He's one of the best damage dealer commanders in the game when it comes to epic commanders. Okay, and he's really good at being tanky because first of all, he takes 10% less damage just across the board. For an epic commander, that's really good. He also gives you 10% more infantry health, and infantry is statistically most of the time the most tanky troop type in the game, so having infantry on the front line is very, very valuable here. Now you could pair him with somebody like Kusunoki, which is a little bit unorthodox, but this is a double AoE pairing and it removes all the debuffs that you're probably going to be getting from the enemy Ethelfleds. That being said, you also can use Ethelfled here, but the point is having Sun Tzu on your front line is going to be very, very good. Another tanky option you have here is actually Joan of Arc, but with full siege. Now the reason that you're going to do this is because the active skill on Joan, it's a little bit worse when she's not expertise, but still very good. Okay, for the next 4 seconds, up to 5 nearby allied or friendly troops gain the following buffs: infantry gain 30% health, cavs gain 30% defense, archers gain 30% attack, and they gain 50 rage per second, which, as we talked about when we were discussing the campaign, rage is what you need to cast active skills. The more you cast them, the better. So the more rage you have, the better everybody else does. This is an AoE rage gain, which is great, and you've got healing, which is very good in Sunset Canyon, and you deal 25% more normal damage, which in the early game, that's really, really good. A lot of your damage is going to be normal damage. In fact, all of it's going to be normal damage from Joan because she doesn't deal any skill damage. But the reason that you do all siege with Joan in Sunset Canyon is because expert design here gives you 6% attack, defense, and health for your siege units. So that is 18% of stats, and for the early game that's an insane amount of stats. Okay, you also can grab stuff like elixir and counterattack, so that way when you heal you're going to heal even more, and you're going to be able to get 9% attack after receiving that healing. And remember, Joan actually has healing on her kit built in. Now there's a couple of options on who you can pair with her. Cleopatra is actually a pretty good option here. She heals up to 5 nearby friendly targets and gives them up to 15% defense for 2 seconds. And like I said before, healing is very good in Sunset Canyon because you are fighting to the death. So the longer you can stay alive, the better you're going to perform in Sunset Canyon. And so Cleopatra is actually pretty good here. What I would recommend that you do if you're going to run Joan of Arc is put her right in the middle of your front line. That way her AoE buffing and the healing of Cleopatra happens to everybody nearby her, right? If she's off all the way over here, you're not going to have your Sun Tzu buffed or healed at all. So make sure they're all stacked close together so they all benefit. If you don't have Cleopatra, which you can get her from events like Strategic Reserve, there are ways to get Cleopatra in the early game relatively easy. Do not use any legendary commander sculptures on her. Just get her for free through events or through gold keys, gold chests in the tavern. But if you're using Kusunoki with your Sun Tzu, then you can actually use your Ethelfled behind your Joan of Arc as well here. And again, the benefits of Ethelfled are self-explanatory. I talked about them already with the debuffs and the AoE. You want Ethelfled also to be at the center of the board here, so that way the AoE fires into as many enemies as possible with that half circle. And beyond that, the other thing we have to touch on when it comes to Joan's talent build is that she has the support tree, and you can put a couple of points into Cage of Thorns, and this is going to AoE slow down the enemies. Okay, up to 5 enemies are going to be slowed down, and the benefit there is that when it comes to Ethelfled, her expertise says you deal 20% more damage to slowed enemies. Okay, so now you're going to slow down everything around you, and then Ethelfled's going to hit them with her AoE, dealing a bunch of extra damage there, which is really, really good stuff. Now the final tanky commander we're going to talk about in this video is, again, very unorthodox but exceptionally good in the early game. I'm talking the first couple of weeks of a server, and that is City Keeper. Now this is a commander that pretty much nobody ever uses, but he is a sleeper pick when it comes to early game Sunset Canyon. Okay, and the reason is very simple. This is, as you can see, a green commander, which means leveling him up is going to be easier than any other commander in the game. The green commanders take the smallest amount of XP to max out. They take the fewest number of stars to max out, and you also have an abundance of green stars and green sculptures to use for commanders like City Keeper. But the benefit is that the talents, the value of the talents, stays the same. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, if we take a look here, you know, Burning Blood, you gain 2 rage for every basic attack that you're hit with. Well, if I look at my Julius Caesar, if I look at his Burning Blood, would you look at that? It's the exact same thing. So what you're going to be doing with City Keeper is leveraging the fact that he's a green commander, which means you can get his level up really fast. You can unlock all of his skills, max everything out, and everyone else is going to be trying to use legendary commanders or purple epic commanders, and they're going to be struggling to level them up because they're not going to have enough stars to do so. So they're not going to be able to push them to a really high level. And so in the early game, City Keeper is surprisingly good with the infantry and attack trees, because like I said before, infantry are typically the tankiest troop type in the game, and so he's kind of like a free-to-play version of Richard when it comes to Sunset Canyon. Now Richard is definitely a much better commander, but if we're just talking about Sunset Canyon, everybody's going to be trying to, you know, when Richard's wheel first comes around, they're going to be trying to use their Richard in Sunset Canyon, but they're not going to have enough gold stars, they're not going to have enough experience or sculptures to really get a lot of value out of him. Meanwhile, your City Keeper can be upwards of level 60 and you can max out all these skills, right? So for 5 seconds you gain 15% defense, you gain 5% health, you gain 5% attack, you gain 5% defense. It's really boring stuff. There's really not a lot from a skill perspective, but it's 15% of guaranteed stats, and then half the time is another 15% defense, so 30% stats total. It doesn't sound like a lot because it's not, but in the very early game it's actually very good. Now when it comes to talent builds, I actually don't have him level 60, so I'm going to share with you guys my Liu Che. You probably don't even see if you're a new player, but don't worry about that now, you'll get him later. But remember, a green commander's talents talents are equal to a legendary commander's talents. So everything you see here on my legendary commander is exactly the same for City Keeper. Okay, so first of all, you grab effortless. Now this says you gain 2.5% bonus damage every 10 seconds up to 10%. Really great stuff here. Lord of War is exceptionally good, considering, again, for a green commander, you're going to be able to max out his star level. So this gives you 9% attack across the board, and any other commander that you're fighting who's not 6 stars is not going to get the value out of that. Okay, I would grab Martial Mastery. This is going to make you very tanky. Grab Armored Joints, grab Unyielding, grab Iron Spear, Undying Fury. You can grab the extra health over here. You can make your way up to Hold the Line, right, which is really nice stuff. So you basically can just copy this talent build specifically. I have more attack and health over here as well to make this as tanky as possible, really. And again, the benefit of City Keeper is that because he's a green commander, there's no opportunity cost to investing in him, right? So for example, if we look at epic commanders and we talk about, you know, let's say you want to invest in your Boudica, right? But any sculpture that you put into Boudica is a sculpture that you're not putting into Sun Tzu, or a sculpture you're not putting into Joan of Arc, right? And they're all sharing that same purple sculpture resource, and that resource is limited. With the green commanders, those resources are disposable basically, so you might as well get value out of them by putting them into City Keeper. And then when it comes to who do you pair him with in the off lane, well, I would recommend, again, pairing him with somebody like Cleopatra, who is just AoE healing, giving you some defense, right? She's just very supportive, and keeping her alive with the tankiness of City Keeper is going to be really nice. Once you get your Richard to a much higher level, you get more skills into him if you are investing in him, then you can use Richard later down the line. He's got healing, he's more tanky, he's just a overall good commander for a lot of things. But in the early game, you're going to be very bottlenecked by gold stars, gold sculptures, experience. Like, it's just going to be difficult. So eventually you'll throw City Keeper away for somebody like Richard, but in the early game, people are going to try to use him and they're just not going to be able to. Okay, so this is what we have so far for the front line. We've got City Keeper with Cleopatra. I know my head is kind of in the way here. Okay, we've got Sun Tzu with Kusunoki. We've got Joan of Arc with Ethelfled. Like I said, she should be probably in the center there. Now who do we use for the back row? Okay, now the back row is mainly going to be mostly damage dealers. So the first commander we're going to talk about is Baibars, because like I said earlier, he has a 5 target when expertised skill damage, really good stuff, a bunch of a cavalry attack on the second skill. He also has a slowdown here as well, so if you're using your Baibars behind your Ethelfled, then you're going to slow down the targets with Baibars, and Ethelfled's expertise is going to cause her to deal more damage to the targets you slowed with Baibars. So a nice little synergy there, which is quite good. And then when it comes to pairings here, you could use somebody like Mehmed, who is again just an AoE commander. Even if you've only just unlocked him, you just throw him in the back row, and now you have a double AoE pairing here, which is very good stuff. Okay, if you want, you could put your Ethelfled back here as well. That's definitely another option, and you just fill something else in with your Joan of Arc. Maybe you put Cleopatra here, and then your City Keeper gets paired with somebody else who's more tanky, like Ulji or something like that. And then for your final back row slot, you're also going to do another very unorthodox option here, and that is using Tomo. Now Tomo is a blue commander, and again, just like with City Keeper, you're going to get a lot of blue stars and sculptures for Tomo that you will have no idea what to do with. Well, you're going to use it here. Okay, you're going to get a lot of value out of Tomo in the early game for Canyon, and a lot of people are not going to even think to do this because nobody uses Tomo, especially in the late game. So she's very cheap to use, very free to play friendly, and has all the advantages that we talked about with City Keeper, being that there's no like opportunity cost to investing in her, really. But look at this, whenever this commander troop launches a basic attack, you gain 20 extra rage. Okay, so she actually has a built-in rage engine, which means she's going to fire her active skills faster than a lot of other commanders might. And when she uses her active skill, her current target deals 15% less damage for the next 2 seconds, so you're debuffing the enemy from the back row. Okay, so you're leveraging all of her talents that you would, same thing with City Keeper, by having her be just over leveled compared to everybody else, and she's a little bit supportive in the back row as well. And because she's in the back row, you're going to keep her alive as long as possible. When it comes to the best pairings here, you can use somebody like Imhotep. Right now, this is an epic commander, so hopefully you get him from the gold chests in abundance there. But it says for the next 3 seconds, up to 5 enemy troops take 30% more damage and lose 50 rage per second, only if you're serving as secondary. Okay, so you can see the synergy here. This is a massive debuff. Okay, and having this in the back row means it's going to stay alive as long as possible. You also are reducing the enemy's is skill damage. Okay, so this would be your full archer build for the back row. And when it comes to talent build here, unfortunately I don't have her all the way to level 60 on my main account, but you're going to grab effortless, you're going to grab martial mastery, you're going to put 3 points into unyielding. You also want to grab razor sharp over here. This is going to get you extra rage, and you probably can grab phoenix tail arrows as well. This is going to get you extra damage factor as well. If you can grab armed and armored too, this is going to get you some extra health, which is quite good. And along the way to razor sharp, you're going to grab at 9% damage to infantry, which is going to be great. Okay, now let's talk about the best gathering commanders in Rise of Kingdoms, and these are super important in the early game because if you don't have resources, you can't level up your buildings, you can't do any research, you can't train troops, you can't heal troops. There's like, without resources you can't really do much. Okay, and the first commander we have to talk about is Joan of Arc. Now, as you guys know, we've already talked about her. She has multiple different ways that she can be valuable here, not just as a gatherer but also in Sunset Canyon, which is why she is probably your #1 priority for gathering. But the second skill is gathering speed 25% and 25% load. So this is universal gathering speed. No matter what you are gathering, this is going to make it faster. So that's why she is so valuable, because even if you look at other commanders like legendary Cleopatra, she specifies that she gains bonus gathering speed for stone, right? Or if we look at a commander like Lady Seong-Gye, she specifies she gains more gathering speed for food, right? And actually doesn't gain any gathering speed for something like gold, which is crazy. So that's why Joan is basically a gold gathering machine, because a lot of these commanders don't have gathering speed increases for gold specifically. Okay, and that will be a bottleneck for research later. Your second priority is going to be Matilda, and the reason for that is because her expertise is one of the best expertises in the game for gathering resources. It's just a flat 10% bonus on the top of whatever you're getting. Okay, so let's say you gathered 1 million resources. With her, it's 1.1 million for free just because you have this skill. It's kind of insane, and the bonus adds up over time. You definitely want her. In the same vein as that is Constance. Her fourth skill is the same thing. You gain 10% extra resources, and as a blue commander, it's going to be easy to level her up. Next, we'll talk about Sunduk. Sunduk is legendary, so expertising her is going to take a very long time, especially because you're only going to get her from gold keys and events. But she is probably the single best legendary gatherer in the game because she gives you gold gathering speed and the 10% bonus here at the end. Your second best gatherer is going to be somebody like Pepin, who also, again, 10% resources on the expertise. Then we have somebody like Casimir, who gives you gold gathering speed and additional resources. And we have Cleopatra finally, who gives you stone gathering speed and additional resources. So that's kind of the order with which I would prioritize some of the higher rarity gatherers. Of course, the blue gathering commanders and Centurion are exceptional until you get them, because somebody like Sarka is universal gathering speed, just like Joan of Arc. Same thing with Centurion, universal gathering speed on the third skill. And these blue commanders and green commanders, like I said earlier, you level them up faster, right? They need less experience to gain more levels, so we love to see that. Now, when it comes to gatherers, first of all, like I said, never use universal legendary commander sculptures on gatherers. That's first rule of thumb. The second rule of thumb is that, you know, the primary commander here really only needs to be level 37. I like to over level a little bit because I don't know what to do with all my experience, but in the early game, level 37 is kind of the cap for gatherers, because that's what lets you get all the way up to superior tools. Now, if you want to go to level 40 and you have extra stars beyond that, you can get modified axle, which gets you a ton of march speed, and time is resources in this case. So the faster your army gets back to your city, the faster you can send them out again. So I like that a lot, but really level 37 is the cap for gatherers to get all the value here. You want to make sure that you get the more the better. This is one of the most important talents in the entire gathering tree because you gain 6% on top of everything. So definitely grab that. Very good stuff. Okay, now the final section we have to touch on is the best commanders when it comes to PvP. This is probably the section of the video that a majority of you guys are wondering about because you're going into KvK1, and there are 2 armies that I recommend to players that are new players who are free to play or low spenders. Okay, the first army is Sun Tzu Prime as the primary commander, with the secondary being Ethelfled. Okay, now this commander pair is exceptional for a few different reasons. The first of which, these are both AoE commanders. Okay, having 2 AoE commanders back to back means you're always going to be popping 5 enemies all at once every time your active skill fires off. The synergy there is insane. You also have bonus skill damage on Sun Tzu, which means your Ethelfled is going to be dealing extra damage as well with her active skill. You also have the tankiness and health on Sun Tzu, which keeps your Ethelfled alive. She takes less counterattack damage, so a little bit tanky there as well. In the end game, this doesn't matter that much, but in the early game, normal attacks and counterattacks are pretty significant, and you've got the debuff on Ethelfled. Okay, okay? Now you would actually use the Sun Tzu as the primary commander here, and the reason for that is because, like I've been saying all video, the lower the rarity, the less experience you need to level them up, but all the talents have the same value, the same equal weight. Okay, so get him to level 60, use him as the primary, and this is the talent build that I would use for open field PvP. Okay, you put 5 points into feral nature to maximize your rage gain, you put 3 points in strong of body for tankiness, 3 points in fleet of foot for extra march speed, and you put 1 point in snare of thorns. Okay, and the reason that you do this is because you are going to be slowing down your target. There's a 10% chance of that, and your Ethelfled deals more damage to slowed targets. Okay, so this has great synergy with your Ethelfled's expertise. Beyond that, you pick up a couple of things along the way that are very good for skill damage in general. So your last 3 points throw into double-headed axe and you are good to go. Of course, with the infantry tree, you're going to be using a full infantry lineup here, so all infantry in your Sun Tzu Ethelfled, that's the way to go. And again, this is sort of like the big damage army, right? This is the army, double AoE, dealing as much damage as possible. It's all skill damage all the time. You've got debuffs and everything like that. This is the best damage dealing free-to-play army for KvK1 that a majority of players like to use. The second army that I would like to recommend to you guys is actually a Belisarius army. Now, Belisarius is a cavalry commander with the mobility tree. You might remember that from earlier in the video where we talked about peacekeepers, and the reason that Belisarius is so good here is because being cavalry with mobility, you could run something like this talent build and get a ton of different march speed, right? Especially with something like hasty departure. The benefit of this army is that if you are faster than everybody else on the battlefield, then one, you can catch up to enemies that are running away. So if they're using Sun Tzu with Ethelfled, then they're weak, they're running away, you can chase them down and there's nothing they can do about it. You're faster than them, you're going to catch them, and you're going to kill them, right? The other thing is that with hasty departure, you can jump in and out of resource points to get 60% march speed, which is insane, and you basically can just decide if you're going to engage with the enemy or not, right? So as a free-to-play player, if the current open field looks like you are at a disadvantage, you can just run away, right? And you just basically decide if you're going to fight or not, right? There's nothing they can do about it. If you just run away, what are they going to do? You're gone. Like, you're not going to take any damage, right? So the benefit of the Belisarius army is that, one, you chase down the weak targets and you run away from the strong targets, and you just decide, right? You decide if you're fighting or not. There's nothing they can do about it no matter what. Okay, that's the way you want to play with this. Your last point goes into this march speed as well, by the way, so keep that in mind. And when it comes to the best pairs for Belisarius as the primary, of course, you're going to pick some cavalry commanders. Okay, so if you're free to play, Belisarius might be your best option here because he's got a slowdown on the active skill. He also has an AoE, so he's dealing a lot of the damage that Belisarius does not have. It's single target, a little bit of a debuff. There's not that much to love there, which is unfortunate. You also get march speed when you exit combat here, so kind of insane. The Belisarius also deals more damage to weak units, which is why I said you want to chase down those yellow and red armies that you see on the battlefield, right? The yellow and red health bar. 5 bars is going to do the AoE damage in the attack, right? So a lot of synergy here with the tankiness and the march speed, and then you're going to have a lot of the AoE damage from buy bars. The other choice that you could pick, if you are lucky enough, really, is somebody like Cao Cao, right? If you're able to get like a 1-1-1-1 or a 2-1-1-1 or something like that, Cao Cao in the early game, then of course you're going to be dealing only single target damage, but you're going to have the benefit of a little bit extra march speed as well. So you're going to be even faster, right, with the Cao Cao. So there's definitely something to be said about that. Now, if you are a low spender, like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is where you would use your Minamoto. You can use Minamoto as the primary. He's going to deal a ton of damage and has some march speed as well. And then the secondary commander is either going to be Cao Cao, like I just said, or it's going to be somebody like Baibars, who's going to deal a ton of AoE damage. Okay, now the last thing that I want to touch on in this video is the Path of Vengeance. Like I said before, this game mode is frankly very easy, and so if you just use the commanders they recommend, you're probably going to get very far here. But I will say that of the rewards that I've noticed, the number one thing you get is experience, right? Like leveling up your commanders. This is the best way to do that, just through being AFK. You can collect this up to 10 hours of AFK time, which is nice. But on top of that, you are going to get some commander sculptures here as well. So some of the commander sculptures that I've noticed is Epic Boudica. I've gotten Joan of Arc. I've gotten Sun Tzu, which I don't know if that's because I started with China or if it's just part of Path of Vengeance. Also noticed that you get Tomo, Lancelot, and Markswoman here. You also, every 5 levels, you can get silver keys and gems. I don't know how they decide on the rewards here, but I just wanted to point out that Path of Vengeance is actually going to give you a lot of the commanders we talked about in this video just for free, just by going through it, right? Boudica, Joan, Sun Tzu, Tamo, all those commanders are commanders we talked about at some point in this video. So again, I want to reiterate this: Path of Vengeance, push this as soon as you can, get as many sculptures and as many experience tombs as you can from this. It's very good for the progression of your account in the early game. And guys, with that being said, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I really hope you'll leave a thumbs up on it. It really helps out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it. Hopefully you found this video informative or useful in some way. Comment down below your thoughts on everything we talked about here. Are there any commanders that I missed, or do you have any questions about the commanders that we talked about? Let me know in the comment section below. And while you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.